Welcome on in. This is the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast for the NFL Divisional Round, the preview for the NFL postseason. I'm excited. I'm your host, John McKechnie. That is Mario Puig. Got a decent bit to get to today. We're going to do deep dives into each of the four divisional round matchups. Without further ado, let's fire things off with the first game on Saturday. The first game of the weekend, we've got the Chiefs 8.5-point favorites at home against the Houston Texans. We got an over-under of 41.5 in that game. Obviously, these two teams met about a month ago now in Arrowhead, and Tank Dell obviously suffered the terrible injury during that game. The Chiefs largely took care of business in that one. The Chiefs haven't really had to lift a finger since Christmas Day. When they beat the Steelers, they obviously kind of took their foot off the gas against the Broncos in the final week of the regular season and then had the bye this past week. The Texans, we kind of danced around it a little bit, maybe myself more than you last week, where talking about this Texans matchup against Chargers, it's like the whole public loves the Chargers the same way that the whole public loved the Browns last year. Same deal. The Texans were able to win that game convincingly, definitely less convincingly than they did against the Browns a year ago. And they got some things working in their favor in that game that are hard to project to carry over 1-to-1. I think specifically when it comes to the turnovers that they were able to force, it's hard to imagine the Chiefs coughing it up to that extent on Saturday here. So take the turnovers off the table here. Like how can the Texans keep this one close or even get the upset?
I think they have a chance, and it will be interesting to see if the Chiefs have any kind of worse rust than usual from kind of taking 2 weeks off pretty much there. They're starters anyway. They do on the defense get back, or might get back, I should say, Jalen Watson. I don't know if that's been confirmed yet, but if he can go and if he can play up to his usual standards, that gives the Chiefs a pretty big addition on defense, and one that not that it means anything different for how like you approach Nico Collins or anything like that. I assume the Chiefs are mostly going to put McDuffie on him and then try to have someone else, at least one other person kind of assisting at all times. And maybe that will be enough to slow Collins or contain him anyway. But the problem for the Texans is they have literally, just as last week, literally no one other than Collins who can step up. And that's fine if you're going against the Chargers, especially on a day where your defensive line is just obliterating their offensive line. But the Texans defense probably needs a narrower set of circumstances, like a narrower group of situations that they can thrive within here, because the more the Chiefs spread out the field on offense, test that corner depth that I think the Texans basically don't have. That's, I think, how the game can kind of get away from them quickly. Like if they let the Chiefs score quickly, if the Chiefs get over 10 points by the second quarter, that might be it for the Chiefs, because given that the Chiefs have, for the Texans, given that the Texans have no one other than Nico Collins who can produce from scrimmage reliably, it's like the Texans need the score to stay low. The score goes over like 24 so much as I don't know who else steps up to get the Texans there. It's at that point you need Nico to go over like 200 yards, which I guess could happen. Or you need someone like John Mechie to get going, and it doesn't really seem like he can. Xavier Hutchinson, I think, is wasting reps on the boundary. I think maybe Hutchinson could be more productive in the slot, but the Texans aren't using him there. So it seems like, in my opinion, you might get a result from the Texans offense in this game a lot like the one last week. The difference is their defense will, of course, take a worse beating than last week. And in this case, the Texans won't be able to, punch back at that point. Like if the Chiefs get it to 27, I think at that point, that's when you start to see Stroud end up in a situation where he's, somebody gets through the line finally after not getting through all games. Some kind of thing just gives that was holding up until that point. And then the wheels come off pretty much. But the Chiefs, for their part, I think they should be able to get things going on offense, because with Hollywood Brown, DeAndre Hopkins, and Xavier Worthy in a 3-wide set, I don't think the Texans have the corner personnel to cover them at once.
Yeah, that is an issue. I mean, once you get past Stingley, it's kind of a tough group to trust holding up, and then of course there's the Travis Kelce factor as well. And I do think maybe it's a little bit undersold or under talked about, but Pacheco suffers the injury earlier this year, and he's not really the same guy after he returns. But I think this long layoff, and I think generally like the script for the Chiefs the last couple of years in the postseason, like January is Pacheco time a little bit. So we'll have to see if the Texans can come correct as far as stopping the run is concerned. And I hate to draw these kind of wild parallels to other like Giants being slain in the postseason, but like, how did the actual Giants beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl like those 2 times? It was the pass rush, and I do wonder about the Chiefs' tackles. I think their tackle situation is a little bit dicey, and I do think that that's the best part of the Texans' defense on the other side, is their ability to get after the passer with Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter. So, the Chiefs aren't going to put Mahomes in harm's way, and he's so good about getting rid of the ball, feeling pressure, sensing it, getting around it, that type of thing. But if this pass rush is lively for the Texans, I think that this gets interesting, at least for a bit. But all told, it's hard to see that the Chiefs truly struggling here.
Yeah, I think the Texans' run defense will show up initially, and that might actually kind of bring about their end if they do. It's almost like the Texans might want to tempt the Chiefs into running a little bit more, because I think the real matchup to watch here is Miles Bryant, who the Texans have been playing in the slot in the absence of Jalen Petrie and Jimmy Ward. They've got this Miles Bryant off the practice squad, and that guy was getting beat all the time for the Patriots for the last couple of years. Marquise Brown has like 17 targets on 40 snaps or something, and he's been getting most of the slot reps between those 3 receivers, him, Worthy, Hopkins. So Marquise Brown against Bryant is a way that I think the Chiefs can score on like the first play wherever they're starting.
So maybe fire up some Marquise Brown in your DFS lineups this week is what I'm gleaning from that one. But since we just got 4 games, let's get a little score prediction here, Mario. What do you got?
I'll say 31-21 Chiefs.
Way over. Okay. Well, a little bit of offensive fireworks. I'm going to lean, and this could certainly be the week that bucks this trend, but Mahomes as a playoff favorite of 7 or more points is 0-5-1 against the spread. This is the lowest total of any Patrick Mahomes playoff game, I think.
Weird.
I think that this is one of those games where there's no question who was the right side, who was the winner. But I think the scoreboard doesn't reflect it quite as much. Give me Chiefs 20. Give me the Texans 13.
Nice. Yeah, I guess I will say the more that the Chiefs run the 2 tight end thing, the more they might miss the chance to hurt Bryant in the slot. So that would be one if they give both Kelce and Noah Gray 40 plus snaps. In other words, that's one thing. Like if that happens, the game probably does slow down, and both teams probably do score less, maybe by a lot.
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting personnel detail to keep in mind while you're watching this one. Before we get on over to the next game, we got a message from our pal Nick Whalen. Going to tell you about DraftKings Pick 6.
We're proud to be brought to you by DraftKings Pick 6. So many NFL offerings each week over at Pick 6. Been enjoying playing on the Pick 6 platform each and every week of the NFL season. Think a certain quarterback will throw for more than 300 yards. How about your favorite receiver scoring a touchdown? Check out Pick 6, the newest way to play fantasy football and win cash right now with DraftKings. Here's how it works. Just pick 2 to 6 players of the same sport and choose if they'll have more or less of a given stat. yards, catches, touchdowns, etc. Lock in those picks and compete against opponents for a shot at huge cash prizes. Download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use our code ROTOPICK. That's ROTOPICK. Again, ROTOPICK, ROTOPICK. If you're a new Pick 6 customer, play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits guaranteed. Just use that code ROTOPICK. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-78-89-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
And we're back. Thanks to that message from DraftKings Pick 6. Really enjoy playing over there, especially, we're dwindling down. A bunch of my best ball teams did not advance, so be leaning on some DK Pick 6 action this week for sure. Let's get on over to the nightcap on Saturday. We've got the Lions 8.5 or 9.5, depending on where you look, point favorites against the Washington Commanders. Your thoughts here?
Seems like some places are even going 10, which is interesting that it's that number itself is interesting, and it's also interesting that there's apparently a bit of movement going on, maybe pretty much everywhere, presumably in response to pretty much everywhere putting the public favoring the Washington side of that, especially if it's the 10 points, the figure that we're starting with. So on the one hand, when you see something like this, it's a little similar to kind of like that Chargers-Houston game where and when everyone's so sure that Vegas is wrong, they just are not. Usually, maybe more than usually, even might be able to say almost always or something like that. So very bad sign for Washington's chances of winning just off the bat, just from these kinds of numbers we're seeing. But I guess I'm still falling for whatever trap the public is, where it just seems it would be surprising to me, I guess, even as someone who doesn't think Washington is truly that good. Like even if they're a 10-6 team or whatever, or sorry, like a 12-5 team or whatever, I think they should be they were a 9-7 team 10 years ago, or in a league that has better competition. But I still would be surprised if they fell behind so decisively behind the Lions. And I say that also as someone who likes the Lions and kind of I at the very least see how the Lions can score points here. It's not like I'm worried about a true goof game on the Detroit offensive side, but I would be surprised if Washington can't answer a little better than that on offense themselves to keep themselves at least within the backdoor cover, set up to go at the end of the game. But the problem for Washington, the biggest one I would say, is that their run defense, even after showing up, respectably last week, their run defense is still sketchy at best. Bobby Wagner's playing hurt, bad ankle, I believe, which can't help things. And I think he might have already been in a lot of trouble against a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs. So I can definitely see how if Washington falls behind 10 or 14 points or whatever, that they'd be in a lot of trouble such that they could have a similar point margin by the end of the game. It's just, I don't easily foresee the turnover or whatever would need to happen on the Washington offense side that would let them fall behind, 2 whole punches. I think probably Terry McLaurin either beats these corners regularly enough that, Daniels can move the ball, or the Detroit defense sells out so much against McLaurin alone that they kind of cut loose these other places. Probably not Zacchaeus in the slot against Branch. I do like Zacchaeus as a slot receiver, but Branch as a slot defender is pretty uniquely good. So you might need De'Ami Brown to step up again. You might need Zach Ertz to step up again. And admittedly, if the Lions can contain or neutralize Terry McLaurin, and if you frame it as then Washington just needs De'Ami Brown and Zach Ertz to save them, then yeah, that admittedly does not give you a lot of faith. But throw in Daniels' running ability, throw in I don't know, there's Eckler, he can get you some first downs, and as long as they kind of eke out first downs over and over, you've seen in a lot of games this year how even if they need to take it to 4th down, Washington usually can kind of just push the probability margins enough times in a row to eke out these little advances. And as long as they don't turn over the ball, I feel like Detroit probably doesn't get that, two score anyway lead. But with that said, I am taking it as an absolute given that the Detroit offense does show up. And so I guess I'd say like the question is whether the Washington offense does as well. I just kind of think probably enough to cover 10 points anyway.
Okay. I guess I want to talk a little bit more about the Washington offense, and such a huge part of their identity this year has been, like you were alluding to there, their ability to extend drives, have these long drives. I mean, we saw it last week against Tampa Bay. We saw it in that Falcons game late on in the season, where they're able to peel off these quarter squeezing drives out of their offense. What's your confidence level that they can do that this time around? And if they're not able to kind of have those long sustained 10 play 7-minute drives or better, is there enough quick strike in this offense to keep it respectable?
Probably not that much quick strike, but I also would be a little surprised if Detroit got so far out ahead on the scoreboard that Washington would need to kind of abandon their run threat. Admittedly, if you get Washington without the run threat on offense, then things get a lot worse in a hurry. There have been a few wacky shootouts late in the year, especially that Eagles game. A lot of weird anecdotal details in that one that have given, in the second half of the year, Washington this big influx of pass attempts that weren't there in the first half. And even so, they still finished the year with one more rush attempt than pass attempts, which is having even the same number of carries as pass attempts in today's NFL is hugely unusual. It's a very run heavy offense, is what I'm saying. And so we've gotten accustomed to all these various results, these standards of production that the Washington offense has. But in this sample, that occurred in the context of certain rates of running to passing. And when you mess with the peripheral details too much, and in this case, I think the risk would be throwing the ball too much, running it not enough, you bring about a whole new set of conditions that you never played under in the sample that you're referring to. So that's the way an offense like Washington's that did so well in the regular season could end up in a game where they all of a sudden just look out of sorts and don't really seem to have it. Maybe you could compare it kind of like to the week 1 game against Tampa Bay, which of course did not happen the second time. So I think it's still easier said than done for the Detroit defense to put Washington into that sort of one-dimensional mode where if you do get them there, they might just fall apart, but getting them there is still far from an easy thing to accomplish. If you even knew exactly what it was you needed to do, it wouldn't be easy to do it even still.
I keep coming back to the idea that the Lions do start fast, and Washington is immediately like kind of under pressure, and like not to take anything away from Daniels' performance or Washington's performance last week in Tampa Bay, like hugely impressive stuff from a rookie quarterback to do that on the road. I think that hadn't been done since like Russ's rookie year, if I remember correctly, parroting the broadcast. But I think going to Ford Field, going against this Lions team right now, I think we're usually, and the spread implies this as well, that there's usually at least one blowout in the divisional round. I think this is the one for me.
It would make sense too if Washington was just kind of a little less in the tank, after kind of having to take it to such extents like they did last week.
No, exactly. And, like there's the rest disadvantage. They played, late Sunday night. Now it's Saturday night. Detroit, I think that they're one of those teams where I worry less about the rust, and I'm more encouraged by the fact that they get a little bit healthier because they got, so dinged up over the course of this season. Yeah. So I think getting Montgomery back, having a guy like Anzalone getting his feet wet again in that season finale, and now being full go here. I got this one, and I'll get your prediction in a second. Give me the Lions 38. Give me the Commanders 14. I think that this one is the runaway of the weekend.
A decapitation. Wow.
Yeah,
I'll say like, I will also say if Detroit gets that big of a lead, I bet they can run out the clock so fast that the game could hit the under, even though Detroit could just take however much they wanted in this game. But yeah, 30. I'll say 34 to 24 Lions.
Okay. All right. So most books, that's going to get you the cover on the Lions side of the ledger. Over under at 55.5. I'd love to see the over. I think that would mean that this game is immensely exciting and back and forth and everything like that. But I think the Lions do their part to get there. I just don't see the Commanders doing theirs necessarily. I think things kind of come apart for them in this spot. So even with the score that I laid out there, you'd still get the under 55.5, even with the Lions coming close to 40 points on Saturday night. Before we get on over to the Sunday action, we got a message from our pals over at Live Golf. A new season of Live Golf Fantasy is coming in 2025. New prizes, new ways to win, and more are coming in the new season. Get ready to play and sign up now at fantasy.livegolf.com. Again, that's fantasy.livegolf.com. We also got a message from our friends over at the Blue Wire Network. And look at that. It's Sunday. Eagles, Rams. Eagles 6 or 6.5 point favorites in this spot. This one being at the link. This one's interesting because I think it plays a lot, at least in my mind, which is a very simple mind. So you get some recency bias and you get some real contrasting recency bias, because I think what the Rams did on Monday night is going to stand out to people. And I think on the other side, despite the Eagles, winning by double digits against the Packers, it wasn't overly convincing, especially on the offensive side of the ledger for Philadelphia. And I think people are going to be like, "Oh, the Rams are real lively here." But I also think that the way in which the Rams were able to dominate defensively, it doesn't really apply here. Like we talk about it all the time. When it comes to the Eagles, they don't want to throw it that much. They don't. And how did the Vikings get blown up in their last two games? They had to throw it a lot because they couldn't run very much. And that you have Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, you have Sam Darnold playing well. That's what's going to make your offense go. The Lions, the Rams blitzed the crap out of Sam Darnold, and he wilted. The Eagles just aren't going to give the Rams that opportunity, I don't think. And the Rams have been suspect against the run this year. They've given up, 4.6 yards per carry. That's pretty, decently below average as far as a run defense is concerned. So while I love what the Rams are building on the defensive side of the ball and how quickly they've been able to kind of move past the Aaron Donald retirement and kind of open this new era where they're still good on defense, it just doesn't really match up to me all that well against the Eagles. What do you think?
I agree. I think the Rams have kind of used up whatever magic they might have had, and their defense can get better in upcoming years, but right now it's still too early in the rebuilding process to hold up, in my opinion, against the finished product, like the for better or worse, the finished product that is the Eagles offense. And it is bad the way the passing game keeps kind of retreating. The Steelers game is the one exception where they sort of went out and accomplished the things that they were looking to. It seems like against the Packers, maybe some of it was the rust, maybe it was coming back from a concussion. Jalen Hurts did not play well at all in that game. And on the year, it's kind of creepy to me that Jalen Hurts, his peripheral numbers are going in this certain direction that hints at something developing that is bad. But it's already there. It's not like it needs. It's not to say it's going to get worse. You saw last week how that's a bad result. The game shouldn't have been competitive as long as it was. And if Jalen Hurts were getting production more like he was 2 years ago, it wouldn't have been. The Eagles want that version of Jalen Hurts to come about, but they just can't seem to make it happen. And in the numbers that are trending the wrong way that I was alluding to. His depth of target this year is down a full yard from the last 2 years and nearly a yard and a half from the 2 years prior to that at 7.5 yards per target. And even with his average depth of target significantly lower than any other year, Jalen Hurts' sack percentage is significantly higher than any year and 3.2 points higher than last year. So that's weird. When the offensive line is definitely not an excuse, when the pass catchers definitely aren't an excuse, I don't have a quick way to, dismiss that development. And if that kind of trend for Hurts continues, or even just sort of, stays the way it has been to this point, that definitely limits their shootout ability. So in the weird, what I consider pretty minimal chance that the Rams offense shows up and scores quickly, scores regularly, moves the ball regularly, then the Eagles would be in a lot of trouble. And that's why the Eagles might be in a lot of trouble the next round or in the Super Bowl or whatever. But I don't think the Rams can do that level of damage on offense. And so I think this sort of less ambitious version of the Eagles offense is more than sufficient. I think the Rams offense just it's too much. The whole game of the Rams offense at this point is kind of just like trying to get the defense into flinching while just doing the same 2 jabs over and over, like throwing little screens and whatever novel designs to Puka Nacua on the boundary. And if the defense is shading toward the boundary too much, we try to get Kyron Williams 3.5 to 4.0 yards precisely on the interior until the defense shifts a little bit this way, and we use a little whatever play action novel kind of thing to get that 1 foot of space for Nacua to get his 6-yard depth of target catch, and we try to get some yardage after the catch, and they just have to kind of just keep doing that forever until they match the point total of the Eagles offense on the other side. And Nacua is going to get his serving for sure, but we've seen a lot of times this year where Matt Stafford cannot get a second target going, and Cooper Kupp, there's nothing in this matchup that looks good. Him going against Cooper DeJean is not going to fix the problems that have limited Kupp lately. And if Nacua doesn't get some help, then it's just, is DeMarcus Robinson going to make up the difference? Clearly not. So I think that the Rams in this game really pay for their ability to not put forth an actually productive run game, because to this point, in my opinion, a combination of strong offensive line play that has largely gone to waste, by the way, in conjunction with defenses conceding the Williams usage, almost baiting it because they love the assurance that, like, hey, the other team will give the ball 25 times to this guy who cannot produce 20 yards on a play. Do you accept this condition or reject it? You accept that. A third of the offense necessarily being less than 20 yards and almost always less than 5, a third of the time or more. Easy win for the defense. So I think the field swallows up the Rams offense outside of Nacua, and I think the Eagles are kind of comfortable here, actually.
I do too. That's my best bet this weekend is the Eagles covering the 6 points. Our guy South Philly chimes in, and I went ahead and independently confirmed this via Google.com. Philadelphia weather for Sunday. Chance of snow, a pretty decent chance of snow. It's going to be hovering right around freezing at kickoff. It looks like that there's a distinct possibility that we get some snow, especially into the second half after the sun goes down. And South Philly also notes when it comes to the Eagles in their offensive line, the one sort of weak link has been their center, apparently missing some blocks. South Philly, the AVI is of a chinchilla at a computer, so I assume that's a selfie. I am fully in favor of chinchillas at the computer.
Yeah, or anywhere. I'm not concerned about the Eagles' offensive line in this one, though. I think the Eagles emphasize heaviness and density and reach and anchor ability with these very heavy offensive linemen they have, and even in the spots where the Rams' defensive front seven is good, they're more one gap than they are two. And if you can't hold up two gap anchor against blockers this big, I think you're going to get knocked around eventually.
I think so too. So I think ultimately, like, the Eagles are just in a spot here where they'll be able to dictate with the ground game, and I think Philly's defense might be the best remaining one.
John, when the field is small and you have to deal with those defensive tackles, it's just a nightmare. Like you can't get away from them if the field is small.
No, you really can't. Jalen Carter is playing insane right now, and I will note, and you can see the G behind me. My guy Nolan Smith is starting to show up. How about that?
Yeah, him. I still am I know he only plays like 25 snaps a game, but I also think Jordan Davis clearly is a big part of why they're so difficult on defense in the front seven. So Rams, they got a great interior offensive line, maybe the best outside of Philadelphia, but I don't think against those tackles with how small the field is otherwise, between the inability to strike from the backfield, the putting Demarcus Robinson on the field instead of a guy like Tutu Atwell. The Rams bring a small field upon themselves, and these conditions just seem like the absolute worst place to be in that kind of situation, in my opinion.
I agree. So Rams, I believe their road ends here. All right, last game. Ravens, Bills. Mario, if you don't mind, I'll say my piece about this game. We'll see if you agree or not, and we'll compare some notes. Oh boy. I mean, this game it's the best one, the best matchup, I think, pre-Super Bowl that we can get in this postseason. I think you got, two deserving MVP candidates going at it. You got the weather of it being outdoors in Buffalo. It's going to be frigid. And I do think that Josh Allen is going to be largely unaffected by that, whereas it's kind of an unknown when it comes to Lamar Jackson. Zay Flowers, I don't believe, was practicing as of Thursday. I think even if he does play, you might be looking at sort of like a decoy type of role. But I think if Baltimore is able to, and it's not going to be 1-to-1 what it looked like last week or what it looked like against the Bills in like week 4 or whatever it was. But I think they found something in the sense of bucking the trend of what Lamar Jackson has been in the postseason for the first 4 or 5 years of his career versus this year. I thought it was really smart for them to utilize the Lamar Jackson rushing asset early on in that game to kind of get him comfortable, get him in a rhythm, avoid the quick 3-and-out where they're trying to throw too much, especially when you don't have a guy like Zay Flowers. So I do anticipate him to be busy on the ground in this spot. And I think also Derrick Henry is going to be a huge factor in this game. And I think it's fair to point out that the Bills were shorthanded defensively in that first matchup. No Matt Milano. I think there's one other key guy that the Bills Twitter seem to think is the Konami code to shutting down the Ravens this week. But I still don't think it's a front seven that matches up particularly well against an offense like this. So I do expect Baltimore to be able to kind of play their game as far as running the ball is concerned. And I still think that there's enough talent around Lamar Jackson in the passing game, whether it's Mark Andrews or Rashad Bateman or even Isaiah Likely, to where missing Flowers, like it means something, but it doesn't mean everything. It's not a kill shot to this passing game. On the other side of the equation, the Bills, Josh Allen is a terrifying player. I mean, he can, put on the cape as good as anyone and get the most out of guys that you certainly wouldn't expect. Like Ty Johnson is a guy you have to watch because Josh Allen is back there. And, we'll see if this is the game that they kind of unleash Amari Cooper. There is a pretty distinct weak link in this Baltimore defense, especially in the secondary. That is Brandon Stevens. He's a guy that gets picked on. I think that the Bills offensive coordinator, Joe Brady, he knows all about that. And they're going to try to get the matchups funneled in Stevens' direction. So it will be on Zach Orr to kind of limit the amount to which Stevens is put in those vulnerable spots. But I think all told, both teams play their style of game. I still think Baltimore goes up there and wins. Whew. That's my piece.
Good job, John. I certainly hope the Ravens win, so I guess I'll just disclose that conflict of interest. But guessing which side could win, not obvious to me.
No.
It is basically, I think, because of the way these teams are built and because of the way the players on the two sides are, respectively, it is somewhat shaping up to be something like Josh Allen versus Derrick Henry. I do think these conditions are a lot more likely to limit Lamar Jackson than Josh Allen. But I guess what the Ravens have to their advantage is they haven't been winning with that, or at least they have shown that they can win either by having this, 40 passing touchdowns Lamar Jackson offense, or they can win by having this more like 28 passing touchdown Lamar Jackson offense where they go mega run heavy. And the Derrick Henry signing was definitely for this very specific situation, or rather, maybe they were hoping it'd be this matchup in Baltimore. Either way, they were like, late season, cold weather, tough defense, high stakes game. What do we want? We want Derrick Henry, not just because of just in general, the fact in general, but you saw in that Steelers game, and this is really good opponent scouting, I think, by the Ravens. They knew enough about Mike Tomlin to know Mike Tomlin in the game planning this week is going to pull up basically all the good and bad plays of your offense, especially against them, the Steelers. And he's going to identify, probably correctly, spots where, like, this is where the play was made or broken. Like, this is this Derrick Henry play where we stopped him. It looked like this because we did this and this. This Derrick Henry play where he beat us went like this instead because we did this and this as opposed to this and this. And he emphasized, especially when they're big underdogs like they were last week, Tomlin's going to emphasize those critical points where the game pivots so much and just go all in on hammering those things. So that's, I think, part of why you saw TJ Watt biting really hard on those Derrick Henry fakes. And the Ravens, Monken must have seen it, somebody must have seen it, they went into the game expecting exactly that to happen. And that's why you might have wondered, like, why is Lamar Jackson running it on like the first 8 plays or whatever? And it was basically that they went in thinking, Watt's gonna, instead of reading it both ways like a defender technically is kind of supposed to, Tomlin's gonna tell him, you go at Henry. And the Ravens guessed correctly that that's what happened, and they made him pay over and over until the Steelers finally adjusted. And I do like that kind of game planning. You like just find the weak spot in the defense and hammer it until they do something different. Don't get cute. Just make them play better, or at least differently, so that you might open something up somewhere else. And Derrick Henry in the cold weather, Derrick Henry against a defense that is deliberately sacrificing, making the trade-off between anchor ability, size, and the ability to kind of cover and disrupt. I said this with Jim on the radio on, I think, Saturday. It's like the Bills built their entire team to beat the Chiefs, and it's like the Ravens built their entire team to beat both the Chiefs and the Bills. And the Bills defense is really not built to deal with the kind of run threats that the Ravens can pose. You got Ed Oliver, who's a great player, but he's small one gap type, 285 or something. Normally you'd want to offset a small one gap type like that playing on your interior with maybe a little extra heft here or there somewhere else. And it just isn't there. The linebackers are small. The defensive linemen they got a guy like Daquan Jones around to be a token 2-gap guy, and occasionally everybody else is small. Those linebackers are 220 pounders. They're 25 pounds lighter than Derrick Henry. So the cold makes everything hurt more. It would be funny if this is a game where Falele can have kind of like a cartoonish leap forward because of just the conditions suiting him so much. Like, instead of reaching out and touching nothing, like maybe people are kind of like slowing down in the cold and he grabs them and they just fall to the ground. And
that's a wrap at that point.
Yeah. So I do think the Ravens are probably going to be able to run, and it would take heroics for the Bills defense to stop Henry before he gets going. And I think the problem for them is unless Allen goes crazy, which could happen, but unless Allen goes crazy, the Ravens don't need to abandon the run. Like, the Ravens, even if the Bills are up 14-0, like assuming it's not too late in the game anyway, it's like the Ravens can just reasonably bet, like, okay, they got 2 touchdowns on us, but unless Allen's on a 5 touchdown pace today, which is highly unlikely, we just keep running, and we know 220 pound Terrell Barnard is going to be a step slower on one of these plays, and when he is, that stiff arm's going to get him. So I think you get Henry to like 10 carries, and it's like the field gets bigger for the Ravens at that point, even though it might be snowing and almost certainly will be very cold.
Yeah, we should have a disclaimer for like the running backs don't matter people to like just sign off before we got to this game.
Blur the thumbnail for it.
Yeah, don't look. But yeah, I think it comes down to that. If Baltimore's able to have success on the ground, even remotely, what it looked like last week or the first time against the Bills, I think the Ravens win. But you cannot discount the possibility of Josh Allen going bonkers on the other side of this one. I think it's going to be close. I think we're going to get the game that we deserve as fans for sitting through kind of a tough to watch for the most part wild card round where there was really only one good game out of 6. I think we're going to get a classic here. I really
the quarterback discourse is going to be so bad. So if you see anybody doing such things, don't encourage it. If it's in person, throw something at them. If it's on the internet, just don't engage. But we need the correct deterrence, the correct incentives in place so that things don't get unbearably stupid, whatever way this game goes.
Yeah, make sure that your timeline is flipped to the people that you're following, not the for you, because you will just be fire hosed with the worst takes on both sides. I've made that mistake pretty much all week, and it's put me in a sour mood.
Don't gaze into the idiot abyss that is the for you page. Yeah.
Save yourselves. I really, I've fallen on that sword this week. I'm starting to have nightmares about this game, which is, probably a really good sign generally. But anyway,
premonitions are always great. Yeah.
Well, I guess we did the predictions for Saturday. Let's get Rams Eagles final score prediction and Ravens Bills prediction before we sign off here.
I'll say Eagles win 24-14, and I'll say the Ravens win. I don't know, 28-27 or something like that.
Okay, so the Bills. If you like the Bills, plus 1.5 at DraftKings, but otherwise, or maybe you just take the money line at that point for Baltimore. We're pretty much similar here. I will take the Eagles 27, Rams 10, and I will take the Ravens 30. No, that's too many Tucker field goals. 31, Bills 27.
Oh, that a boast, a boldly arrogant John McKechnie saying his Ravens cover and win. Interesting.
I know, very, very robust take here, but tis the season for it. The people are not listening for tepid takes. Not at this time of the year. We got to warm up with our hot takes. Yeah. That's mine, and that's going to do it for us on this edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast, previewing the NFL Divisional Round. We will be back, of course, next week previewing the conference championships. We'll probably add some other fun stuff in there to make it a nice full show. Maybe a little bit of a road mapping for the teams that lose this weekend, what they can do to improve in the off season. But for our friends over at DraftKings Pick 6 and our friends over at Live Golf and, of course, at the Blue Wire Network, I'm John McKechnie. That's Mario Puig. Thanks for listening.